And if it can change a city, it can change a state. It can change a state, it can change a nation. If it can change a nation, it can change the world. So I want to know, are you fired up? Ready to go? Fired up? Ready to go? Fired up? Ready to go? Let's go change the world. Thank you, everybody.
Today, President Obama is heading to New York City to make a speech on Wall Street. And if the president is flying to New York, so is Pete Souza. Few Americans ever get to ride on Air Force One, but Pete is one of its most frequent flyers.
How you doing?
This is actually his second tour of duty. Pete also served as a presidential photographer during the Reagan administration in the 1980s. Air Force One has a crew of 26 and space for 76 passengers. Secret Service, military, press corps, senior staff, medical crew, and guests of the president. Pete always has the same reserved seat. And like most staffers, is on the plane before the president's helicopter has even left the White House.
Attention on board the aircraft. The president has departed with a 10-minute flight time.
Pete has already made more than 150 trips on Air Force One and knows nearly every centimeter of the plane.
So this is the conference room. And anytime the president's going to have a meeting with some of his aides, this is usually where they meet. So this is the guest cabin. On the flight back, you'll see probably all the congressmen from New York will be on this flight. And then we'll go back. This is all the press pool, where the press pool sits. So they should be boarding the plane momentarily.
A few minutes later, Marine One arrives. The president is the last to board, except, of course, for Pete. For Souza, Air Force One is the ultimate backdrop to the president's story. But for one presidential photographer on September 11th, 2001, the plane became an essential part of the story.
9/11 is a good example of why there's a White House photographer around. I'd gone to the classroom to talk about reading, and Andy Card came in and whispered in my ear, "A second plane has hit the World Trade Center. America's under attack."
And at that moment, I knew it was going to be a very historic day. I tried to document every moment of that day.
Within the hour, the Secret Service evacuated the president to Air Force One.
There were some days where I truly felt invisible, just a handful of days during my 8 years, and that was a day that I truly felt invisible. I could stand just inches from the president and make pictures, and he would look right through me. It was almost like I wasn't even there. Those first few moments on the plane were very intense because it was all about the physical safety of the president. The eeriest moment was when the president stepped out of the cabin and he said, "I heard that Angel is the next target."
There was a caller that called in with the Air Force One's code name, Angel. He said, "Angel is next." And so at this point in time, people were taking every threat incredibly seriously.
It, to me personally, was like documenting a nightmare.
Covering the crisis left Draper little time to process what had happened. For him, the camera served as a kind of shield, absorbing emotion so he didn't have to.
I don't think I really digested in my mind everything. I think a lot of times using the camera as a distraction worked for me.
About 8 years later, President Obama arrives at New York's JFK Airport and boards Marine One for the trip into Manhattan. Staff, press, and an elite Secret Service team will follow in 3 other choppers. The convoy of helicopters reaches lower Manhattan in about 15 minutes. From here, the president will go to the financial district by motorcade. He'll travel inside his state-of-the-art limousine, known as the Beast. Though Secret Service is not at liberty to disclose the limo's security measures, it's safe to say that while it looks like a Cadillac, it's really a kind of shiny tank. The trip to Federal Hall, only a few blocks away, has taken weeks to plan. It involves hundreds of police officers and Secret Service agents, alternate routes, and contingency plans. Pete often rides in the spare limo, right near the president. But when he rides several cars back, like today, he has to run or risk missing a shot.
Part of my job is, in addition to doing the historical documentation, is doing the handshake photos. So, for instance, the president goes to New York on a trip. There's always greeters at every event that he goes to, and those pictures are really important to the people in the pictures. And so you want to make sure you get those in focus, well exposed, and that memento for them is a big deal.
Thank you. Thank you.
Of the roughly 8,000 to 20,000 photos Pete and his staff make each week, as many as 5% are greeting shots.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Okay, right here, sir.
So many people help the White House on trips like these. Offering them a photograph is a way of saying thanks.
Oh, gotta switch cameras here. Oh, sorry about that, sir. Yep, just gotta switch. I took too many pictures of the speech. He caught me in an embarrassing moment where it's like that never happens to me. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that was a little embarrassing, right?
Man, I tell you.
National Geographic, and suddenly, so the camera broke down. Golly.
I filled the disc.
He's usually much better than this, I promise.
Remember, you got to take the lens cap off.
No, it wasn't
The
the
lens cap is important.
No. It was I filled the disc. I mean, the speech was so exciting that I filled the disc with.
All right, are we ready up?
Before heading back to Washington, the president's meeting former President Clinton for lunch in Greenwich Village. The group that travels with the president spends so much time together, they've become like family.
I think the great thing about this administration is all these people that go on all these trips, everybody gets along. I was going to ride in spare.
In fact, they show their love by mercilessly kidding Pete.
They love him in New York Jackson. It's crazy.
You see all these
I love them everywhere.
That's why they bring their cameras out.
Can you imagine if we announced where we were going?
Who is the chair for? The chair for Pete Souza. Pete. I love Pete Souza.
Trip director Marvin Nicholson and press secretary Robert Gibbs seldom miss an opportunity to rib him.
Whenever we travel with Pete, it's always like this. It's really weird. You see all the bike rack up to make sure that people don't rush the van, just to try to touch Pete.
Oh, God.
What's that sign say? I love Pete. Nice.
Yes, Pete can.
Yes, Pete can. Get up.
For the president, the lunch with former President Clinton will be a chance to talk with one of the few people who understand the pressures that come with this office. Powerful candidates are, by definition, revealing. They give us hints about inner workings, but leave room for imagination about who the subject is or how they're motivated.
A still photograph is extraordinarily powerful. The amount of information that can be in it, the way it can connect to the individual viewer. My approach to the whole thing was to not intrude on the history, to capture it in a way that people could have a sense, and not to feel that it was being manipulated. It wasn't posed, it was natural and candid.
During the Clinton administration, candid images were shot on film. Today, Pete shoots only digital. Pete and his team produce between 20 and 80,000 photos each month. White House photo editor Alice Gabriner looks at every single one.
We care about creating this serious documentary archive. We have the opportunity to create, if we want to, the best archive of any president that's ever existed.
Gabriner sets aside the best images, uploading some to the web. But by law, all are part of the National Archives, and none can be deleted from the collection. When a president leaves office, his presidential library becomes the repository of all the images, whether greeting shots or even more historic ones. Pete and his 3 staff photographers create dozens of official portraits each year. But the one that requires the most forethought is the president's cabinet photo.
It's one of the things that the cabinet loves to have. You also get a cabinet photo, and every member of the cabinet signs each other's photo. It's a little bit like a high school yearbook.
Pete tasked one of his staff photographers, Chuck Kennedy, with making the image.
Usually, as photographers, we're stepping into an event somebody else has created, and in this case, we had to build it from the ground up.
We kind of scrambled around and got everybody from a groundskeeper, some of the household staff.
Our best friends became the kitchen staff. We could call them and they could grab like 12 people really readily and pose for a minute and pretend to be the Secretary of State or whoever.
Though they'd practiced several times with their stand-ins, there would be only one chance to get the real thing.
Mr. President, you're fine. You're next to Rom, the Vice President, next to Secretary of
And so we kind of got everybody into place. We took a lot of photos.
When the president, after 12 or 15 or 20 frames or however many I shot, goes, okay, one of those must have worked, you're just hoping that nobody blinked.
After months of debate, the president's health care reform bill is finally up for a vote in the House of Representatives. Pete has just spent an hour covering the president as he urged members to support it. Now,